Welcome student. Last video I already explained, started the chapters metals and non-metals and already explained their physical properties. Today I am going to more physical properties, that is one, the density and sonority. First I am explaining the density. What is meaning of density? First of all, make it clear. Density means the matter per unit volume. If it is how much matter is there in unit, if it is 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter and 1 centimeter, then 1 centimeter cube, how much matter is there? This is called the density. So normally the metals have more high density and non-metals having the low density. Before I already told that metals are solid and hard, that's why they have the, so per unit volume, that per cubic centimeter they have the more matter in comparison to the non-metals, because non-metals are normally gaseous. That means oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. Always I am telling in general, whenever I am explaining the properties, I am explaining in general. I am not talking about the exception. So students, whenever you will go through the chapter, please go through the, make it clear the exceptions. That means though in general they have the high density, metals having high density and the non-metals having low density, but there are some exceptions. Whereas that sodium, potassium, they have the, though sodium, potassium, they are metals, but still they have the low density. So whenever you go through the chapters, you just make it clear what are the exceptions of this elements, metals and non-metals. Whereas non-metals having the low density because they are gas, but sulfur, phosphorus, they are sulfur, normally I have told that in non-metals, naturally they are in gaseous form, but sulfur, phosphorus, they are in solid form. They are now in room temperature, they exist in a solid state, and there they have the low density. So these are the another physical quantity of metals and non-metals. Now coming sonority. What is called next is sonority. Now what is sonority? Sonority means to make sound. If I make a piece of metals on the floor, it will make a sound. Now how will we do the experiment? You take a coin and you make it fall. If you take a spoon, if you take the crockeries, any plate of made of any metals, that make it to fall on the floor, on the ground, then you will listen a sound. So this sound, that properties or quality of the metals to make sound by heating, this property is called sonority. So that is another quality or physical properties of metal, that to make sound by heating or by vibrating. So these are the properties of metals. Whereas non-metals, since it is maximum in general, these are gaseous form, so they non-metals, they don't have this property to make sound. Clear? Now conductivity of heat and electricity. Next property, physical property, is conductivity. Conductivity of heat and electricity. Okay, now this is the common, very good quality, you can say the metals, that metals can easily conduct heat and electricity. That's why the wares, whatever you will see, maximum made of copper, aluminium, silver, but silver is, since silver is too much costly, so the normal people cannot afford by this. If you make ware by silver, it will be too much costly. So it is beyond our capacity to afford this types of ware. So to make it cheap, we use the copper wire for the conductivity of electricity, and we make the our crockeries, that means the utensils which we use for cooking and some other purposes which we want to make geyser, heater, this one we use the metal wire. That so that because the metals having the property to conduct heat and electricity, that is a very good quality of this metals. Whereas that still where the non-metals, they don't have this types of quality, physical property to conduct heat and electricity. But I already told there is the exceptions. The exceptions were the graphite. Graphite, still graphite, it's a non-metal. Graphite, so though graphite is a non-metal, but still it conduct electricity, because this is the exceptions, that graphite can also pH so that one, that graphite also being a non-metal, it can conduct electricity. Okay, so in the battery we sometimes we make the rod, the electrodes. In the another classes you can understand, I will explain what are the electrodes. So in the battery we can use the graphite for the conductivity of electricity. Still graphite is a non-metal. Okay, so this is the another quality of the non-metals and metals. Now the next quality is melting and boiling point. Melting and boiling point. What is called the melting and boiling point? Melting and boiling point means this is nothing but the temperature. Melting point means the temperature at which the metal or any substance starts to melt. Becomes liquid, from solid to liquid is called the melting point. And boiling point means the temperature at which a metals or a substance starts to boil. To this point, this temperature is called the boiling point. Now coming to the relations with the metals and non-metals. Metals normally they have high melting point. High melting point means by high temperature we can melt the metals, because they have the high melting point means high temperature. At high temperature, normally if you take a piece of iron and or piece of aluminium, and if you want to melt it by the gas burner, you cannot melt it, because the gas burner that much temperature they cannot provide. So this one that's why we cannot melt it, and we cannot normally boil this one by this, but to make it melt or to make it boil, we have to provide a huge temperature. So that's why normally metals have high melting and boiling temperature or boiling point. Whereas the non-metals, just opposite of metals properties, the non-metals, they don't require that much high melting and boiling point, means there you can easily melt or boil the non-metals in low temperature. Clear? But the exceptions I already told, that potassium have moderate melting point, and that means to melt potassium, though it is a metal, but you don't require too much high temperature to melt it, because it has a moderate melting point. Whereas gallium has very low melting point, 30 degrees centigrade. Though gallium is a metal, but still it requires very low temperature, 30 degrees centigrade. You can melted. So that is the exceptions. Each and every properties you will get some exceptions. So it's my suggestions to all of you, just note it down what are the exceptions in the general property by the metals which are not matching with the general property, or non-metals by the general property which are not matching. You just note it down. Otherwise these questions maximum coming in the exam. Now chemical properties of metals and non-metals. So normally the metals and non-metals, they have the chemical properties. What is chemical properties? That means the properties by which the element has the quality to attach or combine to other element and make a completely new substance. That compound, better to say compound, that ability is called the chemical properties or chemical reactivity of the elements. So now I am going to explain about the metals and non-metals chemical properties. First of all, the reactions metals, and now before one more things, let me explain here. Why do some metals, before explaining the chemical properties, let me explain one. Why do metals dull but regain their luster on rubbing? Why do metals get dull? Suppose if you take a copper, any flowers, or if you take a silver, any jewelry, that this one after using sometimes, you will see that there is a dullness of the luster. That means you cannot see that much bright of this metal. Why it's happened? Because due to the reactions of the moisture means the water vapors, oxygens and the water vapors with the metals, due to their reaction, due to their reactivity, due to their properties to combine with other elements. So there is a coating. Suppose it is a golden block, then there are silver block or copper block. So there will be a coating, and this coating is nothing but the oxides or hydroxides of this respective metals, and this coating make the block or make the metals dull, and that's why. But they get back their luster, that means brightness, after rubbing. So when you rub this one by some sandpaper or some other things, then if we remove the coating from there, then we can get back their luster, that means brightness. Okay, so from this relations I can explain that the oxygen reactions with oxygen metals, that's what their reactivity easily react with oxygens and making the metal oxide. And metal oxide is the suppose as sodium. Sodium oxides. Okay, now so sodium is a metal and react with oxygen, so making sodium oxide. So in this way, potassium react with oxygen and making the potassium oxide. So these oxides are called the basic oxides. When metals, keep in mind, metals when react with oxygen, they make the basic oxide. Base and acids you have learnt in previous classes. Then after, so these oxides are basic in nature, wherever when the non-metals react with oxygens, they make the acidic oxides. Okay, so our next video I'll explain more details about the reactions of the metals and non-metals, and your make your conception more clear. Okay, thank you.